Hello, everyone. My name is Yatika Sivani Muthakrishnan, and I'm one of the founders and CEO of the Brain Camaraderie, a youth-led nonprofit advocating for those impacted by rare neurological diseases. Today, we're honored to be joined by Dr. Nianwei Lin, a scientist, entrepreneur, and leader in rare disease research. Born in China and earned his PhD at the University of Florida, his passion for translational science led him to the industry work and eventually at co-founding iXCell's Biotechnologies in 2024. His company provides preclinical drug development services with a strong focus on iPSC-derived cell models for rare disease research. Alongside this, Dr. Lin serves as the Chief Scientific Officer of the Hope for Rare Foundation to address rare disease drug discovery. His work has touched the lives of many families navigating the uncertainties of rare conditions. Dr. Lin, your career path is quite fascinating, and it's amazing how you've managed to navigate your academics, and you're even involved in entrepreneurship, and now you're even closely working with families impacted by rare diseases. Can you begin by sharing a little bit about your background and how your journey led you to specialize specifically in rare disease?
Thank you for the introduction, Athika. And it's my honor to share some of my experience. So as introduced by Athika, I got my PhD training from University of Florida with a major of molecular biology and genetics. I did my postdoc research at Sanford Burnham Medical Research Institute on epigenetic regulation in stem cells and neurodevelopment. And after that, I got my first industry job at Pfizer La Jolla in a toxicology team. In 2014, due to my strong passion for stem cell technologies, I founded iXCell's Biotechnologies in San Diego together with my business partners. The company specialized in creating disease-relevant cell models, including disease in a dish platforms, leveraging our expertise in iPSC or induced pluripotency stem cell engineering and primary cell isolation. And these models, human cell models, support a wide range of preclinical applications such as toxicology testing, personalized medicine development, and both target-based and phenotypic drug screening. And iXCell serves academia, institutes, biotechs, and pharmaceutical companies, accelerating the pace for drug development across different sectors. In 2021, we were reached by our first rare disease family. Their daughter has a rare genetic disorder caused by a mutation in a KCNQ2 gene. This is a critical gene that controls her brain function, and the girl is likely to be severely physically disabled and mentally not progress beyond a few months of age. Because of the small patient population, there is no commercial interest for the major drug makers to develop a drug for these patients. Therefore, the parents decided to develop the drug by themselves instead of waiting for other people to help them. So the family sponsored a physician scientist at Boston Children's Hospital to design a therapeutic approach using the antisense oligos for their daughter. And then they reach out to iXcells for the patient neuronal cell line engineering and drug screening services. And this is our very first rare disease case. And after that, we have been working with more than 50 families and foundations to develop the personalized treatment for individual patients, mostly young children. Besides my work at iXcells, I'm also working as the scientific advisor for several advocacy groups. The Hope for Rare Foundation is a Chinese nonprofit organization dedicated to rare disease research and translational medicine. And last but not least, I'm also planning on a new platform called Rare On to help families with the initiatives to develop personalized medicine, combining education, increasing awareness, fundraising, and consultancy services. I'd love to expand more in the later.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your work. And thank you so much for all your contributions with these families. And honestly, that was really eye-opening. And I see that you've been working in many fields, including science, business, and advocacy. And many believe that money might be the biggest barrier in rare disease treatment. So, from your perspective, what do you think is the most significant systemic barrier that hinder effective development and access to treatment for rare disease conditions beyond just financials or financial funding?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There's a lot of challenges in this field, as you already touched something. But I like to expand in six different aspects. The very first one comes from the diagnosis. So in a different word, finding patients is hard. So many families spend years before they even got their right diagnosis. So there's an average of diagnostic odyssey, which is about 5 to 10 years before the families really understand what's happening for their kids after they develop some symptoms. And parents are scattered, and also patients are scattered all over the world, and doctors don't always share data in a way that connect the dots. That's number one, finding patient. The second one is the rules don't match the reality. So what does that mean? Every country has its own approval system for new drugs. That means companies often have to repeat the same work many, many times, which wastes time. Um, and the rules or the policies are usually designed for the common disease, but not those for those tiny patient groups. And that is the approval system. Number three, running or designing clinical trial is tough. Especially for the rare neurodevelopmental conditions. Uh, there are my there might be only a few dozen patients worldwide. So getting them to the right hospitals with a doctor who knows the disease is a huge challenge. And also not to mention that it's hard to design the double-blind, two-arm clinical trials. Sometimes we only have one single patient to test on for a new drug. So we have to start from a low dose and gradually climb up. So that's very, very different from the conventional way for drug testing. So number four is making the medicine is challenging. So even if a treatment is discovered, the companies or manufacturers that can make these special drugs are usually very few and very expensive, especially for gene therapies. Scaling up production can take years. The next one is the unfair access. Um, so let's say if a drug is finally get approved, and patient in a wealthy country can you may be able to get it, but families in poorer countries are usually left behind. Even in the rich countries, the price tag can also be so high that insurance won't cover. And last, is missing the basic knowledge. The human genome contains 30,000 different genes. Some of the mutation happen in a critical gene can cause mutation, but not only in those coding region, but some non-coding region, which consist of 90% of the human genome. Nowadays, we all realize that if there's mutation happening in those dark matters, sometimes it can also cause disease. So for many rare developmental disease, we don't even fully understand the disease progress over time or what markers to measure a treatment is working. If a treatment is working, for example, a particular a particular disease, even though they are happening in the same gene, but depending on the mutation site, the symptom can be varied quite a bit. Starting from a very mild symptom like cognition, the developmental delayed, or some people couldn't just speak smoothly, to a very severe condition like losing the ability to eat, or completely lose the communication with the ability to communicate. So, and there are some more severe cases that people will die within a few years. So this is making the method how to measure drug efficacy difficult. Yeah, and I'm gonna, yeah, in summary, finding the patient is difficult. There are different rules. The current policies doesn't work for the rare disease. Number three is the design. The clinical trial is difficult, and lack of or very expensive cost, and unfair or unequal access, and lastly, the missing knowledge. So I believe those are some major challenges in this field.
This is a very limited, benefit. So what really motivates you and what really, like throughout your journey, what has motivated you? What have you seen that makes you want to keep going and keep advocating for these problems?
Yeah, so I have several reasons that really keep me motivated. So because I have several roles, right? So firstly, as a scientist, I'm motivated by the curiosity and discovery. And rare disease research not only help patients, it often leads to a breakthrough that benefits science as a whole. For example, some of the new technology is firstly be applied in human for those people who carry the rare disease because they cannot benefit from some conventional technology like small molecules. So some of the patient has to turn or try a new technology, for example, gene therapy. So earlier this year, there's a little baby called a KJ. He was born with a very severe defects in his liver that he's lacking a critical enzyme that can digest the food he's eating. So basically, when he eats, the level of his blood accumulating a lot of toxin. So using a hospital in Philadelphia, they use a technology called a CRISPR or gene editing to correct the DNA mutation in his liver. And after the treatment, now his daily lives return to normal. So this is a new technology, and the firstly applied to human, and it's because the patient are desperate. There's no other treatment. There's no other alternatives that can be benefit, can help the patient, and that's why they have to testing the new technology. And this has been seen a lot of times in the science field. So that is the first motivation. I really love to see, how our discovery can be translated to something that can really benefit the real world. And secondly, as an entrepreneur, I'm driven by the opportunity to turn discoveries into real world solutions. So, although we already mentioned so many challenges, to me, all these challenges means and opportunities behind there. So, building platforms like iXcells or RareOn or other biotech venues that can translate lab findings into therapies give me purpose. Um, because I see a path for science to impact actual patients, overcoming hurdles in funding or scaling is part of the journey. And I believe entrepreneur can play a crucial role here to turn the small success and reinforce the bet. So this is reinforces the belief that the innovation is possible. And lastly, as a philanthropic advocate, I'm inspired, of course, by the people and the community we serve. So patients and families remind me why the work matters. They show resilience and hope that motivate every decision. Um, Supporting the equitable access, raising awareness, and connecting stakeholders, creating tangible changes, and that human impact is often the most rewarding part of all. And that I think that's all three of these aspects is the root of my motivation.
It's absolutely amazing to see your passion just shine through all these initiatives. And I love how you took your past initiatives, like your research, and your future initiatives with your entrepreneurship skills, and how you really combine these interdisciplinary and you connected them well together. And that's just amazing to see. Now let's switch to one of your companies. So one of your company's core contributions has been the use of patient-specific cell modules, such as human iPSC-derived neurons. Can you tell us more about these modules and how you think they could bridge the gap between, the scientific discoveries and how they can translate into medicine for complicated neurological diseases or rare diseases in general?
Yeah. So my company IXLs is dedicated to using the human cells, right? Especially iPSC. So when scientists study rare brain disease, one of the hardest part is that we usually can look directly at patients' brain cells, uh, because you couldn't simply just take the brain samples from the living people, right? So that's where the cell models come in. So one powerful tool is called iPSC, or induced pluripotent stem cells. These are the special cell lines that scientists can make from a simple skin or blood sample. So what's amazing is that we can reprogram them back into a stem cell state and then guide them into grow into almost any kind of human cells, including neurons and the cell, which is the cells in the brain for rare neurological disorders, and this is a game changer. So we can create neurons that carry the same genetic changes as a patient. So, in fact, we have been helping more than 50 different patients to make their iPSC lines from the small amount of blood sample they send us, so that we can create a disease in a dish, and which reflecting what's happening in the children's brain. And scientists can watch these neurons behavior. So what we are trying to see is comparing the patient's neurons versus the healthy donors' neurons. We're trying to identify the behavior different. For example, the gene expression or morphology or the response to the drug. As long as we can see difference, then we can potentially design a screening approach that if we can put a drug or treatment into the patient cells, if the drug or candidate drug can revert the phenotype back into the humans, the healthy condition, then you get a hit. That's called a drug candidates, right? So of course we need to test it in in the animal before we apply to human. It's a very long path, but that's basically what the iPSC can help. Um, and lastly, researchers can also test the potential drug directly on these patient-driven neurons. And these neurons are derived from the particular patients, they carry their own mutation, and specifically they carry uh, the identical genome from the patient, right? Because sometimes there's a lot of patient or donor variation. People have different response to a particular drug, right? But here we're using a particular individual's cell lines. So the readout and the drug response from these tested cell lines can best reflect the potential response in a human, in the particular patient. So that's really called a personalized medicine. So in short, iPSC-derived neurons are like a window into the brain in a lab culture dish. They bridge the gap between the basic research, which is understanding what goes wrong in the disease, and the translational medicine, which is trying to find a real therapy that help patients.
So, with these models, what specific unmet needs or challenges have you seen? Whether it's even just those cells or maybe even drugs or new technology.
Yeah. So in a rare disease research, one of the biggest challenges is that the patients are rare, right? We only have very few amount of patients, so the data is limited. And the traditional model for drug discovery don't always reflect the real for the real disease. For the brain or neurodevelopmental disorders, especially animal models like mouse often fail to capture what's really happening in the human neurons, and that means promising treatment can work in animal, but sometimes they can fail in people. So by creating the patient-derived cell models, which is neuron grown from a patient's own blood or skin cells, we can study this disease in a way that much closer to reality. So these models help us firstly to understand how the disease starts and progresses in human cells. Second, we can test the therapies in a personalized way since each patient's cells carry the exact genetic mutation, as I said. Lastly, speed up the translation from the lab discovery to the real treatment without always rely on slow and imperfect animal studies, especially those animal study, it's very, very costly, but they are not always reflecting the real situation in human. So in fact, FDA has announced the Modernization Act 2.0 with the purpose to removing the requirement for animal testing for a lot of for drug discovery, particularly in rare diseases.
That's interesting facts. Thank you. And now let's switch more into the patient needs and families. So, families affected by rare diseases often face conflicting advice from multiple scientific advisors and even struggle to make decisions. Could you share how your platforms help these families and ensure equitable access, and maybe even touch on many specific things your company has did?
Yeah, very good question. So since we have been talking to many families, there I do see the challenge you just mentioned. Families with rare diseases often found themselves in an overwhelming situation. So imagine being told your child has a condition that very few doctors in the world understand. So out of the desperation, parents reach out to usually multiple researchers, scientists, doctors, and labs. And each expert may give different advice, right? Sometimes even conflicting. And for families, it's incredibly hard to know which path to trust, and pressure time is lost a lot. So a well-known example is Mila's story. Mila is a girl with a unique form of Batten disease, and her family connected with many scientists before one team eventually developed a personalized therapy just for her. That breakthrough was remarkable, but the process was chaotic, stressful, and not sometimes it's not something every family can realistically navigate on their own. So that's where our platform aim to help. Um, so I have been planning on a nonprofit platform trying to create a structured, transparent, and collaborative system where the family don't have to chase dozens of experts. Instead, we connect them to a curated network of advisors who can review cases together. Guidance is shared in a plain language or language, so families understood options without really being buried in a technical jargon. And we emphasize equity. Every family, not just the most resourceful or very well connected families, deserve access to experts' guidance and to learn from other families' experience. But that doesn't mean these services are free. But actually, I do feel that a decent or a fair or transparent pricing structure should be shared and can go a long way. So in a way, our platform act like a camper, a compass for the family. Instead of wandering in circles, they have a clearer path forward with both scientific rigor and passionate support to building.
Let's switch back to drug development. So we know that rare disease drug development could also potentially be a little risky, and it's not only about speed and getting things going fast. It's also about ethics and sustainability, especially when patients are like very vulnerable or maybe even in an undersourced place. So how do you ensure that the drug discovery, development, and implementation um, are ethical and sustainable from lab to even potentially these clinical applicants?
There are several aspects. So I go through one by one. So first is transparency. Family deserve honest updates, not the false promises, right? We share what's not and what is the realistic timeline are. So some disease may be able to treat if the molecular mechanism is clear, but sometimes it's not always the case, right? We need to be very honest. We don't want to overpromise. Uh, Secondly, is the equity. Access to innovative approaches like iPSC models or personalized therapy shouldn't depend only on money or connections, right? So we design a platform that can make the guidance more widely available. There are a lot of consideration around this, depending on the population, depending on the urgency, and depending on the scientific, feasibilities, and also potential business, the commercial pathway down the road. But these will be all considered. So number three is the rigors of science. So every experiment must be carefully designed and peer reviewed that results are reliable. This is critical, right? So we cannot sacrifice the rigors here. It's just like conventional drug development. So for the conventional therapy development, um, the major player is the biofarmers. They have great resources. They usually have a huge group of scientific team to evaluate the data rigors or um, how to prioritize the resources. But here, although we don't have that kind of resource, but we still need to maintain a platform or channel that everybody can have express their view and opinions that if there's a very famous word in a farmer field that if you want to kill a pipeline, you better kill early, right? So that means that you don't want to really waste money. So that's all based on the rigors in science. Number four is the responsible translation. So before moving into patients, therapy must go through safety testing and regulatory review. Even if a family is desperate, we have to protect them from the untested inventions. So sometimes this is difficult because a lot of times we are facing desperate families, so they're struggling with life-threatening disease conditions. So they really want to put the drug on the patient as early as possible, right? So a lot of times when you ask them, right, they tell me that I'm hoping we can have the treatment tomorrow, but we need to have a good balance to between maintaining the expectation from the family versus the keeping the scientific rigor. Of course, everybody this has to build on a trust that we do all of our best to accelerate, right? So finding a good partners, it's critical. So lastly is the sustainability. So by building the partnership between academia, biotech, and patient foundations, we spread costs and make sure projects don't collapse when one funding source runs out. So and so we are pretty lucky that the United States government, including NIH, FDA, has put in quite a lot of resources to support early stage projects. And we also have some charitable funds. And there's some also the foundations that are funded by celebrities that they are willing to support a rare disease project at various stages. So, but those are not enough, right? Considering that here a large population, we have 10,000 different diseases. So there's hundreds of millions of people in the world. So those funding is still very precious. And that's why I'm trying to help them to connect those rare disease communities to a broader the public through the rare own platform that more people are willing to continuously supporting their initiatives by tagging the real story to tangible products. So yeah, in short, yeah. So this is a very challenging question. So I simply just focus on the patient side, but I didn't really touch base on the business side because it's a very different topic.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for explaining all these hurdles. And honestly, I understood so much. And yeah, thank you. But AI is becoming more prevalent nowadays, especially in areas like drug discovery. So in this perspective, what do you think is the greatest potential of AI in accelerating rare disease research and development? And what ethical considerations must be addressed?
Yeah, that's another good question. So we're lucky, but sometimes we're also unlucky. We're living in the AI era, right? So it's beginning of the AI era. So everybody is talking about AI, and I'm also seeing a huge breakthrough in some of the areas. For example, the AlphaFold for predicting the protein structure. So AI has impacting many different aspects in research. It has an enormous potential to speed up the rare disease research by helping the scientists to analyze the huge amount of data quickly, from patient genetic profiles to cell model experiments, for example. So it can help identify new drug targets, predict how a therapy might work in a patient without really testing it, and even suggest personalized treatment strategies. So this is especially important when patient numbers are very small. So AI can also make a clinical trial design smarter. So finding the patterns that human might miss and improving the chance of success. But this is all based on the assumption that we have the resource to get or collect reliable data. So all this AI tool is trained by a large collection of data. So if we don't have those data, so the machine cannot understand how to, what to reference to. So the good thing is they say that so rare disease families they all believe in the open source model. So they are hoping they can um, because individual cases are very rare. So each disease are quite rare, but altogether there are millions or hundreds of millions of people, right? So they are willing to share all their approaches in the data. So this is making the AI tool potentially, can be applied into the drug prediction, toxicology prediction in the future. But now the first thing is to build a platform to really curate and collect the data. So, and regarding your second questions, there are important ethical consideration for sure, not only for research, but in different areas. So AI algorithms are only as good as the data they are trained on. So we must ensure the diverse and representative data sets to avoid bias. For example, for a rare disease like ALS, there are some ethical, preference in different familial mutations. So in order to train the data, so we better to collect the diversity across different ethical groups, right? And covering different genders, different ages, to make sure, the data is representing all the human beings, not a particular country, not a particular, ethnic group. Uh, so patient privacy is another concern, because of the sensitive genetic and health information must be protected. And finally, transparency matters. Families and clinicians need to understand how AI comes to its conclusions. So they need to understand how this works, right? We need to know, what is in the black box so that the trust can be maintained and the decision remain human centered, right? Because at the end, we don't want to be, so even though some of the initiatives is trying to commercialize the products or data collected through the process, but the donor consent form need to be in place just to let the patient understand, how the company or partners is going to be utilize their data. So as again, transparency is very critical here.
Awesome, thank you. We agree. Transparency and diversity are one of the most important factors in this, especially for the patient's point of view. Now, switching to your nonprofit, how do you think the Hope for Rare Foundation could help translate medicine globally, especially in advancing children's access to therapies?
Yeah. So I only get to know Hope for Rare Foundation had less than a year, so I'm still trying to understand how the organization is functioning. But to my knowledge, this is one of the biggest and most influential organization for rare disorders in China. So which is where I was born. Um, so at Hope for Rare Foundation, our mission is to make cutting-edge therapies accessible to children around the world, not only in China, not just in wealthy countries. So we do this by supporting research that is patient-centered, funding early-stage development, and building the platforms that connect families with scientific experts. We also focus on the translational pathways, helping the promising discovery move from the lab to a safe and regulated treatment more efficiently. Um, Equally important is the equity and education. So families need clear and trustworthy guidance about emerging therapies so that they can make informed decisions. So by combining the scientific rigor, advocacy, and global collaborations, we aim to ensure that the children everywhere can benefit from the breakthroughs in rare disease medicines, not just a privilege, a few. I do see there's a lot of real world challenges. For example, the language barriers, and there are people using different social media in China. They don't have the access to Google and YouTube. So I think I have a responsibility to help them to understand what's happening outside of the country. And I'm trying to also helping the patient from the rest of the world, for example, in the United States, to have the access to gain to connect with the patients groups in China, because China has the biggest patient population in the world. Uh, and there's one important aspect happening in my country is that the technologies and supply chains is evolving very fast in the past few years. So which is making the cost of drug discovery much, much cheaper and faster if we can really bring in the power in China. For example, we have CDMOs that make AAV or antisense oligos much, much cheaper than the partners in America. So I'm talking about half or even 20% of the cost. And lastly is the clinical trial. The practice is slightly different. So in China, they has a clinical practice called IIT, investigator initiated trials, so which offer a much flexible and more convenient way to let the researchers, not the farmer, not a biotech, it is the researchers to initiate the clinical trial. Of course, there are a lot of safety concerns and regulations cannot be sacrificed. I'm still trying, I'm very, very eager to understand how this can really benefit the patient from all over the world. So I already have a lot of connections that are interested to understand IT. So I'm also learning.
With your initiatives in China, how important do you think global collaboration is in addressing these rare diseases? And how do you think youth-led initiatives could contribute to these international efforts?
Very interesting. Yeah, so interesting enough, I told my daughter, who is also in ninth grade, that to also start a youth club in her high school, because I do feel that now it's just the beginning of personalized medicine. And thanks for the advancement of gene testing and a new technology like gene therapy and antisense. But we still have a lot of challenges, right? So we need a new blood. We need young people that can really make a real difference in rare disease research, even without being scientists. You don't have to be the scientist to have the impact. So one practical step is starting from the raising awareness, just like what you're doing here. Sharing the patient stories, social media campaigns, or school projects can help connect families and researchers. And another is the supporting uh, patient registries or advocacy groups, which will collect the data that scientists needs to understand disease and develop therapies. You don't need to have 4 years college training in order to do so. Actually, I do have a volunteer from the high school. He is willing to help a Chinese family to um, to put on to input the data into the natural history data sets, which is located in United States. There's language barrier, there's internet challenges. So the high school students did a wonderful job here. So that's the real world challenges. And lastly, students can also volunteer for fundraise for organizations that support rare disease research. So even the small actions like participating in a charity run or helping organization community events to helping organize the community events contribute to funding studies and speed up the treatments. So the key is that every effort, no matter how small, helps the families and researchers to move closer to become to a better outcomes.
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, and I completely understand your perspective as well, because I see it in my own school that everyone is very motivated, especially the young people. And speaking of young people, many of them may even be listening to this podcast and considering neuroscience, biotechnology, rare disease, or even like nonprofit or entrepreneurship work. So, what advice would you give to those young people who want to step up into the field and eventually lead in this research or in this direction?
Yeah, I think for young people interested in a neuroscience, biotechnologies, or even nonprofit work, my advice is to follow your curiosity and stay persistent. The rare disease research is challenging, but every small discovery can make a huge difference for patients. And as I already mentioned, the rare disease is helping the scientists to understand some very, very basic biological process to really help the science field to evolve over the years. So by understanding what's happening, what is the gene, right? And where is this mutation why this mutation causing a particular genes, causing the disease, and how this disease is causing the people to lose the ability to talk, right? So all these are very interesting questions. The science is fun, right? So by increased awareness, firstly, you educate yourself and spread the word. And at the end, it can spark your in curiosity or passion for science, right? So I think that's something, it's going to be fun. And lastly, learn widely. science, business, advocacy all matter because solutions often come from combining knowledge across different fields. So that's why I suggest that get involved early. We need a lot of people in this. This is a global health crisis affecting 350 million people globally, right? So in America, there are 10% of people affected. So there's already 10,000 more than 10,000 diseases are discovered, and this number increased very, very quickly. So we need hundreds of thousands of very passionate people. So volunteer, so you get involved early, volunteer with patient organization, join research labs, or help with awareness campaigns. Building the connection with patient families and mentors will give you insight into real world challenges and inspire creative solutions. And finally, remember that compassions and collaborations are just as important as intelligence. So leading in a rare disease work means using your skills to help others and make tangible impact.
I was going to ask if you could leave our audience with one powerful message, but I guess you covered it all. So, yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, and thank you so much for sharing your experiences and being very honest. I hope this conversation will be very eye-opening for our audience. And this interview will be available soon on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and even our nonprofit website. If you're listening and felt impacted by this conversation, please consider sharing this episode with a friend or on social media. And please follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all the other platforms to stay updated with the Brain Camaraderie. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.